I was out earlier this evening on my walk, and there was a couple that I encountered, and they were pushing along a baby in a pram. And the particular lane that I was walking down, it terminates at a farm, and you can actually walk beyond it. But basically, if you're just going for a short stroll, you would normally walk to the end of this particular lane before the farm, and then you'd double back on yourself, which I did. And I said hello on the way to this point, and then as I was turning round, I encountered them again. And the lady of the outfit said, "What are you doing? Are you out on your exercise?" I said, "I'm out on an evening stroll, yeah." And it's not a criticism of what they were saying, by the way, but most of what people talk about and think, it's all quite surface level, quite practical. But what I've actually always held is, I've talked about this in context of intelligence, that intelligence is actually making connections that other people may not necessarily be able to, or they're not interested, or that they just, just don't. And it got me thinking that it's not just about intelligence. It's making connections is actually incredibly powerful in all the areas of your life, really, particularly when it comes to relationships. Whenever you're going into anything, you want to make sure that both sides of the equation are actually benefiting. You want symbiotic relationships that are mutually beneficial. And if you've got solid one-to-one relationships, well, that's a really good basis for creating communities which can have further reaching advantages to them. And what I'm always thinking about is making things as simple as I possibly can, because you can get so lost in the weeds of things. And I know that part of my prolonged agony in various relationships is just not admitting to myself at earlier stages that this isn't working, this isn't beneficial for me, this is damaging, and I've tried against my better judgment and tried so desperately to make things work. And I think part of it is my nascent and innate optimism. But I think it's also the fact that I am an intelligent man. There's absolutely no denying it. And often I can see things long before other people do. And it might take months or it might take years. And I'm not saying this in a "I told you so" kind of way. But I do always get, well, I say always, often get people coming back to me and say, "Well, actually, the thing is, Martin, at the time of us having XYZ conversation, you did say these things to me, and I didn't want to see it at the time." And I think, well, it's quite nice that people do actually come back and acknowledge that. And I remember in the earlier visits when I moved back up here, that my family and I would be wandering around the area, and my parents and siblings and people would say, "Gosh, it's a nice place, isn't it?" I said, yeah yes, it is, and it still is. It's why I came back here. A few things different, but fabulous place to live. And I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity of being able to move back up here and to actually use it as a springboard, for my future abundant life. But it's why I talk about noticing, right? I try and pay attention to all of the smaller details, ways of being grateful, but looking actually at how things are working independently, how they're working together, what's the outcome of this situation going to be, and not necessarily always take advantage of things, but be able to, logically infer where things are going and how one might, potentially reduce the harm of certain situations, of being able to start planning, but never actually forgetting to execute. And this goes back to a lot of what you might call failed relationships on my part, is, well, when I know that the writing's on the wall, don't avert my gaze, don't ignore things, act on them as soon as I possibly can. And that's the advice that I would give. I do firmly believe that things happen at the right time, but I did ignore my better judgment for a long time with a lot of different people and with various business ventures, that had I have acted on my instincts earlier, potentially I could be in a very different position now. But that's why I want to work with people who can see that there's potential, but it's not actually going to be realised until they make a decision on their own behalf. And the only way really that you can actually do any of these things is to throw yourself into into the void, frankly, into the darkness, and start experimenting. I think this is the lesson that we learn from all people, that you can try and have the perfect plan, you can try and prepare for absolutely everything, but the only way that you learn and develop strength and resilience is by getting into the fray and realizing that most of the worries exist in your head, and when you actually encounter the things that you've been afraid of, you actually think, oh, actually, that doesn't matter. But it's very, very easy to say on the other side of having made decisions that seem frightening at the time, but when you've actually done them, you think, oh, actually, that was pretty easy. And we are incredibly gifted as human beings, and we are immensely powerful and resilient. So, yeah, start to see things that other people don't. Start to trust yourself more, trust in your own resilience and your ability, and just start doing the work, because you'll be glad that you did at the end of the day.